with communities seeking innovation in time of crisis using scientific and technological methodology for human dignity. Okay, for me it's a pleasure to introduce her, and you can start your talk about smart digital innovation for human dignity, Carol. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and it's so lovely to be connected to my origin, to my country. I was born in Chile. I lived for 20 years, and then when I was 21, I came over to Australia, and I can actually share my journey. And it's very personal, this presentation, because my human dignity never really experienced this type of innovation in my country before I came here in 91. And since then, I work with vulnerable communities, and I dedicate my doctoral program to do this. I hope you enjoy this, because all what I'm going to show you today is actually made in Temuco. It's actually from Temuco to the world. Therefore, I'm going to share with you. I've got only 40 minutes, and Doris is our chairperson. She will tell me when I'm very close to the end. That way you can ask questions, observation, or suggestions. Therefore, my name is Carol Huilin. I have a research and development teams in Hochstetter. It's actually right at the front of a mall center we got in Temuco. And I got a Bachelor of Nursing. I did that in 95. Then I moved to honors degree in quality and safety with a scholarship in Australia. And then I got invited in the University of Melbourne here to do my doctorate about 20 years ago. And I did a postdoctoral in artificial intelligence. I joined over 143 hospitals here in Victoria to use the same registers and to innovate, basically, to don't leave any sick person outside the system. Therefore, I developed standards, architectures, and obviously, for my postdoc, I did a little intelligent agent to join all the journey of the patient through all these complex system in Australia. And in 2015, after going around the world, I did a Master of Law in the Catholic University in Chile, in Santiago, in the first #1 law faculty in Latin America. And I dedicate my life for the last, I believe it was only 10 years to be a teacher at university, but when I arrived last year here in Australia, they did a full registration process, and I believe I've been a teacher since I was 14. I got involved in the church in Chile. For today, what I'm going to reflect with this is how we can maximize all the benefits but minimize the risk of using smart digital technology. And we got 3 ways to do it in practice. From Temuco, we got engagement with the region called Bio Bio, Antofagasta, Puerto Aysén. From the Araucanía, we actually embrace all this platform because of COVID-19. The reality is that I was the dean of a faculty here in Temuco, but the readiness of the population is really not there, because there are other priorities. Temuco is very rich in human resources and in natural resources, but it's a big gap in education. Therefore, it's a lot of ethical questions I asked when I was the dean of a faculty, because we have services to children. And in Chile, we got a lot of evidence, scientific evidence, that when the state of the Republic of Chile take care of children, they don't do it very well. It's no justice for them. We got 53% of our children, Chilean children, who the government take care, 53 goes to jail. Therefore, we don't do a good job to protect the human dignity when I'm in trouble, especially when there's no structure of the family. Therefore, I asked myself about digital ethics, and we started to do some research on that. And we use big data. And also in my Master of Law, it was about looking the legal framework in Chile to have the data protection, which is 19,628, which is actually on the air a little bit in Chile because they're updating that legal framework. Therefore, to protect the data in Chile is very hard because it's a high level, but when you go to a small institution, they don't have clarity about privacy or confidentiality. In actual fact, the Constitution of Chile don't have the word confidentiality or privacy. It just tell you got the right to have a private life, but they don't tell you about the data. And as you know, any intelligent system required quality of data to protect the human dignity. Therefore, as you can see on the right side, the 14th of April 2020, because of COVID-19, the hierarchy of intelligent platform changed. Before, we used to do in Europe and in America, in Asia and Africa, we used to say, let's make profit with artificial intelligence, let's create economy. But COVID-19 come and we collapse. We need to keep people healthy. Therefore, now they took people, planet, and profit, or prosperity, they call it. Therefore, the economy goes second. First is to look at human dignity first. Therefore, we found ourselves in Temuco to look for this type of solution. Therefore, we really need to get on with business, and that's why I'm going to share now with you. Therefore, how we did it, we basically use future-proof science. We have a lot of doctorate people involved with us, not only from Chile, but it's scientific community. As you know, some of you may be the scientists. We work with our peers. Science doesn't get created alone. We belong to a community. When we publish, we need to be recognized by our peers. Therefore, when in crisis, our human dignity is in crisis. Therefore, we created this person-centered smart digital tool based on interdisciplinary work. We got in Chile also priests involved in digital development. We got lawyers, we got doctors, we got nurses, we got community, civil society. Because when you have COVID and your system collapse, and also when your trust collapse with politicians, with the church, with any power center technology, and people don't have access, the people start to self-manage. We use FOSS, it means we use only open source. We don't develop any closed system. Therefore, we build capacity with the people. We use connectivism, is what is called in 2005 in Canada, Australia, and England. We use it as a legal framework. It's digital education when you create a network which actually respect the reference point of the knowledge. You don't compete, you collaborate. Therefore, your digital journey with intelligent agents, it becomes self-directed, and that saves a lot of money. And that's every university in the world, they're doing it now. Because in Australia, for example, we lost millions of international students and billions of dollars because we don't have business. Therefore, connectivism allowed us to provide masters and PhD online now. Before, it wasn't accredited. We couldn't give that everything online, but because of COVID-19, we have to honor the contract with our students internationally. We are the only one in Chile doing semantic interoperability. It's a term that people don't recognize a lot in public services or civil society services. Therefore, we got a lot of fragmentation. But with this smart technology, we've been able to promote communication, human communication, access to ethical data and informed decision. Therefore, we have met with the health ministers, and we have showed also this work to the educational Minister of Chile. We're in conversation with the several regions. And obviously, we seek sustainable innovation. Therefore, that's our method to do basically respect the human dignity of everyone. Therefore, how we have achieved with about 80 partners in Chile. We do consultancy, we provide a smart partnership, legal framework as well, creating a scientific culture to protect human dignity. Therefore, we don't contract only scientists, but we contract people from the community to work with scientists. Therefore, we kill the gap. Because in Chile, when you have a PhD, you become very elite. You have to publish, and we paid 1 million or 2 million of pesos to publish, which is unusual because globally, no scientists get paid for publication. That's not a culture for a true scientist. But because the system pushed this constant competition, the scientists found themselves very alone publishing papers, and they become a machine of papers. but it doesn't get those evidence to the community because, unfortunately, our system in Chile of science and technology is business-driven. It's not society-driven. Therefore, it gives us a big gap. The time the scientists spend 20 years of knowledge, the community, the common and trivial people don't understand the finding because the scientists move too far away. Therefore, what have we been able to do with the neighborhood and community is we put them first. They enter to the digital journey with their human dignity allowed, mean they are subject to the rights. And you will see the example I will show you in 10 minutes is ontologies, architecture based on ontologies, clinical knowledge based on ontologies is the B. The do is the protocol of people self-caring at home. It means how I prevent you don't get with COVID-19. Therefore, I send the protocols to them. They don't have to go to the medical center to find out how to self-protect. A knowledge-driven system, basically all the scientific finding of dealing with COVID, with the children, with the adults, with the people at home who cannot move, is transferred to the family. Worked very well in the developed world, and it is working in Chile as well. And the process is actually determined or defined by the people. And usually the integration, which is semantic interoperability, it will take usually a year to integrate the existing system with the new system. Therefore, how we get this humanized technology to protect the human dignity is done, as you can see, the sustainable innovation starts with people, not with the power of big data or artificial intelligence. Basically, the profile of the user is well defined by the self-discovery. It means they go through 5 to 7 weeks through the digital transformation with their own terms. Therefore, they're not only university professionals, because in Chile it exists a code called Código Sense, which in any company can provide some training to their people. And that's the way we actually enter to different organizations. They enter to digital health to do the right thing, digital, ethical, and bioethical issues to actually analyze the data. And big data, we look algorithm as well with the legal framework of Chile, and also digital teaching, which is connectivism, because we train people from the entire faculty. We got professors, deans, then they're preparing to the digital transformation for human dignity. Therefore, all these models based on data, stakeholders, collaboration, and technology. But all is to do with the human evolution of the dignity to enter this new world. And obviously, we use all these platforms as person because the person is subject to rights and duties. It's not the client, it's not the user, it's not the women, it's not the men, it's actually the person. The person you can justify scientifically the human dignity by constitutional law. It means that when a platform is obtaining or selecting data without the consent, you can sue that person or that company. Therefore, they develop skills and knowledge with us through the process of self-determination. Now, in Spanish, it's a little bit different. When you say a person is self-determined in English, it means that you're independent, you're autonomous, and you own the data. But in Chile, self-determination is actually given, and it's actually explained in Spanish like this. The person is autonomous, la persona es autónoma, but the community is self-determined. It means el pueblo es autodeterminado, which is one is singular, person, and the other one is collective. Therefore, when you do artificial intelligence and you want to have a collective intelligence, you need to use self-determination. I mean, the community agree which attribute, which fields one in that platform. It's the long way, but it's the secure ethically and also guarantee the protection of human dignity. Therefore, the machine doesn't go to their own velocity. Machine learning or deep learning is actually the human who's in charge of that machine. And human activity is much slower and the velocity is different than a machine. And then we're able now, and obviously in Temuco, we actually already having all the design and deployment of a data center because we got the servers in Temuco. We don't use any server for North America, Asia, or Africa. We learning with the community to self-protect their own human dignity. Therefore, how do you do this? And obviously you can find all this information and how you can make sure the data, design, use, and the world have an interrelationship. We got biased, we human beings. And that's the reason we use ethical frameworks. You need to recognize when you develop a system, you need to have interdisciplinary perspective, because one engineer alone, it cannot develop a better platform to actually protect the human dignity. I know a lot of Chilean people, especially a councillor, and we work with a lot of municipality and local government, and they tell me straight away, they said, but it's impossible, the engineer should be in charge of this. Yes, obviously, but that engineer need help because human dignity, it got multiple dimensions, not only one. Therefore, after that, we deployed all the imbalance. I mean, we dedicate a lot of time for the indigenous community, for abused people like women and children. We have a lot of engagement with people who don't belong to the system. That's really our focus of sigla.org. We work with communities because we definitely been excluded, like for example, migrations is an issue in Chile. We don't have many algorithms who recognize the Black people. We don't have many algorithms who recognize the children from different colors. And actually their precision is so low that we don't have real studies at the national level yet, even though last week it was launched the National Artificial Intelligence Plan in Chile. Therefore, we do have a big gap, but what we need to guarantee is that the injustice doesn't reflect in our applications. And our application can really deeper all the inequalities we live at the moment. And that's why obviously now with COVID-19, all the research area I've been doing for 25 years becomes so relevant, which is called digital health, which is about accessing the right medication, the right vaccine, to make sure the people don't get discriminated between the public and private system. And obviously all this platform I'm showing you now is to do with clinical decision making when it's not enough doctors on the regional part. Therefore, how we do it, this is the justification for all the pillars of digital data. We do have a governance for human dignity. We use all the protection we have with artificial intelligence or the algorithm to maximize the benefit. We oversight and enforcement through not only legal framework, because some of the legal framework in Latin America, they're not ethicals, because they give dominance to the commercial platform rather than protecting the human dignity. Therefore, it creates more unemployment rather than embrace the digital transformation as a way to improve human development. Therefore, there are 4 pillars we use all the time in our project in Temuco and in Chile. Ethics and consent, we make sure we have an e-consent. We have a procedure, and we're actually working to get ISO 9001 to have quality data and structural control, because someone actually from the University of Ufro, a professor of quality who helped us with that. We have all documented with journally, all our developers around Chile have backups, metadata, and fidelity of the data. We can justify when we don't have a black box, we have a transparent box. We can expressly show you the algorithm because we know by name and we know even where the developer lives. Therefore, we do have a human community rather than a machine learning community. And obviously, with my Master of Law, we have a legal framework. We actually advise it to the government, and we actually involve with their bid with the bank from the Inter-American level. I work for the Global World Bank, but with CITLA, we're actually working with the regional Latin American bank. Therefore, some of the data principles, especially for indigenous people, this is all to do with science, and you will find that we got a key principle for the indigenous data governance, the special one. We use some of the framework for New Zealand, Australia, and obviously Canada. We do have a few. We have a Radio CITLA. We actually got some people from America who help us every week in Science for Everyone, it's called, especially indigenous skill coding for that, for the human dignity. And obviously we have the open data principles and the FAIR principle for data management. And obviously we're not going to disregard all the companies who want basically to make digital dividends, because this is about digital economy. Therefore, there's the paper. I will leave them the copy as well for the organizing of this Congress, that where they can review all the scientific evidence I provide. This is very relevant to us in COVID-19. We recognize in Canada as well that you provide empowerment to the user, to the end user, you can save a lot of money. If you can give the digital medical record, only 7 or 8% of the population, you can save between $81 and $96 million. If you really can provide just a very small outpatient appointment, you can save between $6 and $50 million. I mean, this is about moving the agency of power legally and ethically with a smart digital technology to the people. It saves a lot of money because the system is congested, it's fragmented, and it's causing a lot of trouble, especially in Chile, because primary care setting, they get about 8,500 pesos for a while. When you get sick in critical care, they get 50 million pesos for 1 month. Therefore, the investment is totally unjust. It's not an equilibrium. And obviously, all this study is what I ask. Basically, I'm a consultant for the United Nations. I do that for every country who are interested to see how much money they're losing by not empowering the people through the human dignity. Therefore, this is some of their innovation made in Chile for building capacity. All our innovation, the co-creation, we don't keep intellectual property for us, we share with our partners. Therefore, it's digital self-care. This one is actually being implemented in a few municipalities of Chile because we know COVID is not going to go. Therefore, we got an algorithm that the person can from home have their own bubble. And obviously, this is done with the ecosystem for mental health. It can be applied also waiting list. We got 3 million people of Chilean waiting to be diagnosed with, it's called HES in Chile, and chronic disease. And also we actually provide some consultancy for public policy and artificial intelligence in Chile. Therefore, this is a little bit 2 minutes. I think I still have some minutes. That way you can see one of them working. Can you tell me, Doris, if you can hear this?
Yes, you have 10 minutes. 50 minutes.
Oh, wonderful. I've been trying to be short and
you have more, really, almost 20. We cannot listen to you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Excellent. The fourth, that's only denial of a system, because you saw the end user's perspective, but this end user got public health implications. Obviously, the privacy is guaranteed because it's only the contact list for them. And they determine, and in the mapping doesn't got a ratio, then you cannot identify where these people lives, because you can discriminate. People get panic if you get a red traffic light. You said, oh, this person is just too sick. Well, it's not without any structure. It's an architecture based on science of caring. Therefore, this is the platform actually is joined to it, and basically come through local, regional, and national. Therefore, the business intelligence is go through each layer, and each layer got their own cyber security. Usually we use ISO 8000 to protect that data. This is a project we want with Corfo, which actually is going to be implemented in Latin America, which is called in Chile Semilla Expande. Therefore, this platform, we start firstly for a smart tool for smart people, for clinical placement, because all the hospital and center of caring in Chile was shut for all the students, and therefore they really have a lot of trouble for medicine, nursing, physiotherapists. I mean, there are about 15 professions they couldn't go and do the clinical practice because of COVID. Therefore, we created this platform to ensure that the students don't get left behind, and basically they have nearly lost 2 years of this. Therefore, we got semantic interoperability, educational process for clinical simulation. We got remote clinical protocol and smart research, and the Sun University they're using for accreditation. And also, we're the only one platform of a smart digital tool using Lego framework, which is 20,584, which by law, the data management have to be explicit to the patient. I did my master about that. That's why we implemented. This is the administration view. It got the appointment by the week, what is available, and each specialist available. This is a little bit what I show you the platform. Basically, I won't put sound that way I can explain. Basically, you enter to this platform and you get one login for everything, because some of the students got anatomy and physiology. Basically, they got sometimes 5 different platforms to do one subject and 3 visits to 3 hospitals. Therefore, what do we do with interoperability? We join them all together through the administration and the curriculum. And the curriculum who actually made in Chile exists an organization called AUR, which the 25 university from the regions, and they give us the protocol to follow for clinical placement. Therefore, with that, we were able to develop this platform with their own profile with each user for each clinical case, for the teacher, for the student, for the first line, for the people who work next to the patient, to ensure they don't get contagious with COVID-19, but the process is still online happening. And obviously the patient registry, we're the only one provide interoperability, means that it's based on archetypes, clinical archetypes from England. That clinical archetype we developed here in Australia about 15 years ago. And basically we have all these possibility for the first time to integrate all the care for the patient, that way the human dignity doesn't get damaged through the process. Usually what happens if you don't have this integrated platform, you go to one hospital, they ask you for one examination, you go to another one, in Antofagasta, they ask you for another one. Therefore, you replicate the cost of your attention with one doctor, then you go back to another doctor and you duplicate, and in the end, you get frustrated and you don't get the care on time, and you get frustrated, and people died looking for care, and people dying to understand why they don't get a diagnosis. Today in Chile, the 3 million people don't have a diagnosis. They're still waiting. Therefore, that's the answer we're doing. Also, with CITLA citizenship, human interaction with real-time participation. This is Junta de Vecinos, is what is actually neighborhood. It's a person in Puerto Aysén, us. They have people they call postrados, people who are in bed, but they're very lucid. And they're the one actually with this council participate in real time. Basically, we provide the tool. They have their own survey. They fill up in real time, and the basic council get the answer right away from their own community. We don't interfere. We just provide the technology. They basically create that technology themselves because we build capacity. We don't sell software. We don't sell platform. We bring human dignity by an educational process. That way they become developers. Therefore, we're teaching coding to children, 10 years old, until people of 84 years old, because that's the new language of the future. Therefore, we got many minutes left. Woohoo!
Oh, thank you, Carol. We have some questions here. I am going to read. Millaray Curira asks you how the authorities you have been with are receiving this perspective you are developing. How the
the authorities, they're very, I mean, they're too known because the World Health Organization and the vaccine required all this terminology. Therefore, we presented in the health ministry. It's a digital health and a smart data management there as well. And in Latin America, well, we got about 5 countries, the authorities that really, this is a necessity. This is not a luxury. Today with COVID-19, the people who don't have the data don't have care.
Okay. Okay. Joao Batista is asking you, is the Chilean artificial intelligence plan considering the ethical issues raised by your organization?
Yes, definitely. Even though it's only a plan, basically it's not a policy just yet in Chile. Therefore, the plan declared and they're talented. They put in a very person-centered approach. It is a beginning. I mean, Chile is not the leaders in Latin America. Colombia is going ahead a little bit with more experience in Medellin. I am part of the expert team with the president of Colombia. Therefore, we are learning. There are a lot of ethical issues and bioethical as well. Therefore, I think it's only the first step. And obviously, we as a scientist, we need to provide evidence to the Minister of Science and Technology to make sure we can put ourselves in all these possible risk, possible context, no?
Okay. And again, Joao Batista asks you, do you see similar initiative of ethical artificial intelligence in other South American countries? Are South America too far from the North Hemisphere?
Well, it's fascinating, you know, because Latin America has got a very good collective thinking. Therefore, since the Bank or Inter-American Bank put a paper who encouraged all the Latin American countries to have artificial intelligence plan, we got already 40% of the country developing the plan. Therefore, we are ahead than North America. North America, it got 53 states. I live in Virginia myself, and they're very fragmented. I mean, they are very powerful sellers and commercial to the world, but it's a little bit a challenge to work collectively in North America because every state is very fragmented, no?
Okay. Well, we have another. Millaray again, is the North Hemisphere more advanced in these issues, ethical artificial development?
I would argue not, but the European Union, yes. Therefore, North America, I don't think so. They do have great scientists, but they're very fragmented. From a collective manner, I think February 2020, they launched the paper of artificial intelligence. However, the major ethical issue from a southern hemisphere is that the North want to conquer the digital environment to South. And if we don't use our evidence, we're going to risk our culture, our territory. Because all the platform, which we know, basically they impose a little bit the value or the interpretation of that data. Therefore, they see us as numbers. We don't have much room to make sure we people developing innovation.
Okay, I would like to, okay, there is another. How do you perform the so many cultures adaptation? How do you manage the diversity?
I think more than manage the diversity is to build capacity. Each person got the culture at home. They got the original culture. I mean, culture as such is basically what we teach in data governance is intercultural environment. Therefore, we develop the standards, and everyone who enters the digital environment, the artificial intelligence only replicate good practice of humans. Therefore, we don't recreate a game, we recreate good practice through legal framework, and then we move to guarantee the diversity and inclusivity of the human being.
Okay, perfect. Another question of Claudio Helt. Ricardo Baeza is very involved in the bias in the web and artificial intelligence. Have you collaborated with him? Do you know him? As a colleague?
Yeah, I actually I founded the Optia, which is an observatory to watch algorithms in Chile. He's the founder with me. Therefore, yeah, I know him.
Okay, perfect. Just I would like to ask Mirai, she sent the first comment. Maybe you can explain, Mirai, the first comment that is about this is a change, at least in the theory, with the new law for the state university. We have to perform region pertinent research. Can you explain it a bit, maybe?
Yes, because I really agree with Carol that we are in a system that sometimes, many times, most of time, we are far from the society. In fact, we are trying to publish. This is our north, and but now the new law of state universities in Chile says in the definition of the university that the university must be pertinent to the region. And this is a mission for the university. So of course this kind of research will go on, but we are now impelled to the other research that is more applied, more pertinent, more in synchronization with our region. And this is, I think, a very good information, because a very good news, because in fact in Chile, as Carol said, I am very agreed with you that when you become a doctor, you become something out of the planet. And in Chile many times it happens also with the politicians. You become a deputy, a senator, and you go far from another planet. You don't live anymore with the people. I think in Latin America it can be the same, but in Chile it's very specially like that. So we need to be more on earth, on the real problems of the real people. And I think that the law is very in that way. Thank you.
Thank you, I totally agree also. Okay, okay, as we don't have more questions, I would like just to thank Carol Huilin. Thank you very much. It was a really good talk, and I hope we are going to invite you in the future events activity, and I hope to meet you in Chile as well. Thank you.
Of course, I got tickets, and hopefully they open the borders that way I can arrive. I mean, I am a dual resident. I was born in Chile, and I'm a citizen here as well. And I have to be very grateful. You're doing a fantastic job. Oh, nice, York. Thank you. Everyone is welcome to Australia if you want to come. I've got a research center here as well. Therefore, I'm very proud to be involved with Temuco, Chile. I left my email. If anyone need more information, I'm here to collaborate. Bye.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Carol.
you.
I want to thank you very much for being here. And well, I know it's a bit late for you, but I invite you in not the next talk, but after that at 11 o'clock here in Chile, we will have another talk about ethical aspects of artificial intelligence. So you are kindly invited to assist even from your bed if you are in bed at that time. Thank you very much. You have
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much, Doris, also.
Bye. You
Okay.
will continue.
Then we are going to have a break of 15 minutes. Well, it's a bit more because we start again. Let me see my schedule. We start again at 10:15. Okay, with Barbara Poblete and mining social networks to learn about rumors, hate speech, bias, and polarization. I want to underline that this morning we will have many talks about ethics, and it's very interesting for us in the organization, and next LASCCI also included this track because, as you may see, we need to talk about that also, how our research, our developments are impacting society and the environment in general. Thank you very much. So we see together, we are going to be together at 10:50. Doris, you want to say something?
No, thank you very much to everybody. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Pero el YouTube también tiene que parar.
Hola. Quisiera probar el PPT, si hay alguien.
Yo estoy al menos.
Ya, no, me refería a los organizadores de la conferencia, pero,
Bueno, pero igual
pero
estoy.
les he estado chateando todo el rato, pero no me responden.
Hola.
Hola Doris, ¿cómo estáis?
En realidad
¿Cómo
estábamos
estás?
conversando con Villaray, estábamos hablando por teléfono.
Hola. ¿Cómo está live por YouTube? Dije, no sé si decir algo, voy a quedarme callada. Ya voy a aprovechar entonces.
Live, eso yo decía.
Voy a aprovechar de probar la presentación entonces. A ver, acá está. Ahí me dicen...
Se está viendo perfecto, Bárbara.
Perfecto.
y ahora ves la presentación pantalla completa, ¿cierto?
Sí.
Esa está en pantalla completa, pero se ve grande, sí.
O sea, sí, pero llena toda la... Acá. Y ahí la avanzo y sí. Listo. Ok, voy a dejar de compartir entonces. Estamos listos entonces.
Sí. Empezamos a las 10:15.
Sí, volveré a apagarme.
Hola, José, no te había visto.
Hola. Hola, Andrea, y hola, Bárbara.
Hola, hola.
La Doris.
Hola.
Estamos live en YouTube.
Sí, eso es raro. Bueno, está bien.
¿Pero se está transmitiendo?
Parece que sí. Ah, yo tengo el YouTube en mi...
Ah, porque ese sí se puede difundir para los que quieran ver las
Sí, y
charlas.
estamos ahora en YouTube.
Sí, eso estaba viendo. Por eso no me atreví a hablar.
Sí, mejor no digamos cosas íntimas.
Yo le mandé un WhatsApp de...
De YouTube
¿A mí?
no sale.
Ah, no lo había visto. ¿Me mandaste el link, Doris?
Te lo puedo mandar por WhatsApp si quieres, o en el chat,
¿En el
si
chat?
quieres lo pongo, porque está
Sí,
ahí.
mándalo.
Bárbara,
correo.
Bárbara, arriba donde dice live on YouTube, podéis copiarlo.
Sí,
También.
Arriba de eso.
sí, sí
Ah,
se puede
ya.
copiar ahí, yo lo vi.
Ok, lo voy a publicar entonces.
Ahí te publiqué.
Ok. Mientras no publiques el Zoom, estamos bien.
No.
¿Las charlas están siendo en inglés? Sí. Ya.
Well, I think we are on time. We are going to start with this presentation. Thank you very much, Barbara Poblete and Jose del Piano, who will be the chair of this interesting conference. Jose, you have all the control. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, Mirai. Good morning, Barbara. Good morning, everyone. Good to be with you all. It's my pleasure to introduce Barbara Poblete. She's a computer scientist working in the fields of data science and AI to understand human behavior. She has many years of experience in the areas of online social network analysis, web mining, and information retrieval. She has a PhD in informatics and digital communications from the Universidad Pompeu Fabra in Barcelona, Spain. She was a researcher at Yahoo Labs, and she's now an associate professor at the computer science department at the University of Chile, a researcher at the Millennium Institute, foundational research on data, and a visiting academic at Amazon. So, please ask your questions in the chat. I will be passing them to the speaker. And Barbara, the suggestion given by the organizers is to use 40 minutes for your talk, and in order to have some time for questions and a discussion at the end. So,
okay. Sure. Perfect. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. So thank you, Jose, for the presentation. Thank you, Mirai, for inviting me to give this keynote. So as mentioned in the title of my talk, this is like a very current topic and very relevant to us, like disinformation, misinformation in crisis, because we have been living a crisis a long time, almost like 2 years for the entire world. So this is a situation that we had never seen before. And in this sense, I never expected that the things that I had been researching for like 10 years would become so relevant at this point. And I will share with you some thoughts about it and some of the work that we have done. I have added a new affiliation to my to the list of my affiliations. I now have a CENIA, which is a new research center on artificial intelligence. This is a Centro Basal that has been recently granted. And I'm one of the PIs here, and our goal is going to be to, at least of my research line, is to research AI with a human-centered focus, which is following this whole entire line of research of how we can use AI to benefit society and not make it worse, you know? So disclosure, I'm not really a machine learning person. Like my specialty is not developing machine learning techniques. I'm more of a data mining person, now known as a data scientist. I have worked on information retrieval search engines for a very long time. And the main goal of my research is to extract knowledge from data, and also to do work that is reproducible, that other people can take and produce the same results with their own data or with my data, and to generalize them to other scenarios. So I value that much more than making small improvements on an existing model or tuning something so it gives better results. For me, machine learning is a tool. And as a person that works in data mining, what I teach my students is how to pick the best tool for each task. Sometimes it's going to be deep learning. Sometimes it's not going to be deep learning. So I think one of the messages I'm going to give in this talk is that deep learning is not the answer to everything. So that's also something. I usually start my talks talking about the change that the social web has implied for all of us people that are connected to the internet. before, when the internet started, some of you will remember, others maybe too young, it was more or less, there wasn't as much content as there is now. Content tended to be like more curated content, and it was like going to a library. So you could browse a lot of content, and then you were like a passive person that was just navigating this whole repository of content. Then there was the emergence of the social web, which are social platforms, you know, like Twitter and Facebook. There were others before, but they were not as successful. And what happened there is that people started producing content and being able to publish it. And this content was published very rapidly. So it's the characteristic is that it's real time. I will think about something and I would publish it like right away, and it will become instantly shared with all my followers or all my friends. So everybody started publishing content. There was also everybody now has a smartphone, not everybody, but a lot of people have a smartphone. So we can take pictures as well. We can generate videos. So we can create multimodal content and publish it on the web. So the content on the web has exploded. And now we have different qualities of content, because like different information quality. We have some very good quality content that everybody has relied on. And we have some poor quality content as well, and content that is maybe not as reliable. But I will show you how we can still use social networks to extract value, but how we need to be careful with it. So now everybody's a producer of content, but nobody is really checking or checking things that everybody's publishing, because it's just too much. So it's not scalable really to curate all the content that is currently published on the web. And everybody can just post whatever they want. So the social web and social networks are a very interesting environment to analyze for different types of scientists. There has been, recently we have started talking a lot about social computational scientists, which are people that come from computer science and go into the more social aspects of research, and also people that come from social sciences and work also with computational aspects to understand how human society works. And why do we study social networks? Because there are different biases. Like we cannot say, for example, that Twitter or Facebook represents the entire society. We know that because it's very hard to predict elections, for example, by looking only at social networks, or to extract information. You still need like polls to understand, or surveys or things like that. But it does provide kind of like a looking glass into society, into a portion of society, and we can kind of correct certain biases to infer other information. So it's like the most access we have ever had to studying real social networks. Before, the analysis of social network was reduced to very small samples. Something that's interesting about social networks is how it has become a new information media. So social networks, for a large portion of their users, has become the primary source of information. This comes with a distrust that it has been happening currently with traditional information media. People have stopped trusting traditional media and are relying mostly on social networks. This has a lot of disadvantages that we only trust social networks, but this is what the current scenario is like. We are producing, as I was telling you, real-time information from all over the world. This has given us a new field, which is called crisis informatics, which is how to provide information to handle emergency situations like natural disasters or man-made situations like terrorist attacks and wildfires and things like that. How to gather information from the web, digital information, mostly from social networks, and use it to handle or to provide intelligence for handling disasters. So this has been proven to be very useful. And we also can find information about any kind of event, like a football match, a concert, whatever, will be published on social media instantly. So another characteristic is that a lot of breaking news will happen first or will appear first in social media. These are two emblematic cases that I usually share in my presentations because they're like, this is what Twitter is. So this is the emergency landing on the Hudson River on the right. And this is the first picture that was posted about that event in the world was on Twitter. So there was this person, Janice Kranz, who was on a ferry in the river, and the plane landed and they went to get people to help save people from there. And he took that picture, and this was the first picture posted in the world, and it was first on Twitter. It has been like all over. And the other one was the Osama bin Laden raid, that somebody unknowingly live blogged this event. So this person posted the first tweet at 1 a.m. about helicopters in his area, and then posted a series of other tweets describing what was happening and didn't realize that this was the Osama bin Laden raid. So a lot of breaking news happened here. But this has made us very vulnerable to how information is shaped online. So basically, we believe whatever is presented to us. And since we think it's from a trusted source, for example, on Twitter, I follow friends and people I trust. So in general, I could come to think that since I trust these people, the content that they're going to provide is something that I can rely on. But it's not always that way. We're very susceptible to whatever appears. And during crisis, there is a sense of urgency, and there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of uncertainty that make us take information that we would not usually trust it, but it could seem like something very important. So we will help disseminate it very quickly because we think that since it's a crisis, it's very important that people have information very fast. We have found, we have seen that there are many types of unreliable information online. There's this classification that was done some years ago by Claire Wardle. So it was like there information that is, for example, satire or parody. And, you know, like there's El Mundo Today, there's The Onion, and they will publish like parodies. There are a lot of accounts that will simulate being an official account, but for the purpose of creating like funny content. But some people will take this as true and they will disseminate it. They will still think it's true. There's also misleading content. So it's like when you use certain information that can mislead you to a conclusion that is not true about a certain individual or a certain issue. There is imposter content as well, where an account appears to be from somebody different than they're trying to be, they're like an imposter. And there's like fabricated content, which is like 100% fake content. And what we have seen is that this can now be like even automatically generated with like current language models. So it can be a lot of content in this sense. You don't need people to generate it. There can be false connections where you have a headline that doesn't really match. That a headline will say something very spectacular, and then if you read the content, it doesn't really reflect the headline. There can be false content, there can be manipulated content. So there are a lot of ways to manipulate or to provide misinformation or disinformation online. We started working on this problem in 2011 or 2010, really, inspired by the earthquake in 2010 that was in Chile, that like most of you know, was one of the largest in history. And in that opportunity, we published a paper that was called the Information Credibility on Twitter. So the thing about this paper is that before this, scientists had never observed the phenomena of fake news, or we had not realized that this was happening. So how did we come to think about this? What happened during the earthquake is that there were a lot of rumors, but there was no official access to other information like official sources for several hours. So Twitter was a way in which people communicated, and some people started rumors there that turned out not to be true. So we observed this phenomenon and we studied it. I'm going to show you a few observations that we made at that time, but it was the first paper to study fake news on online social media. So this year, after 10 years, it received an award that is called the Seoul Test of Time Award, that shows is given to the works that have been most influential in web research. Yeah, if you look at this series of papers about information credibility, they now have like about 3,000 citations, like the 3 different papers that talk about this topic. So there have been a lot of work after it. So we should have already solved this problem, you know, but we're far from it. So our studies at that point was about real-time disinformation. We had the earthquake, largest in history, a lot of casualties. And the clear phenomenon here was that we did not have access to other sources of information for 2 to 3 hours. The first video images came about 6 hours after the event. So the only way in which people communicated was Twitter. There was, I think the national link was down, but the international link, one of the ones that went through the US, and that was the one that Twitter used, was still working. So Twitter was one of the only things that worked, and a lot of people were using it in Chile because it was largely adopted for the elections that had been, I think, the same year. So everybody was on Twitter. There was, like, for example, we studied this hashtag Terremoto Chile about conversations in the following, like, at the moment of the earthquake, half an hour later, half an hour later, half an hour later, and people were already propagating the information very quickly. We looked like for different days at the conversations, like these are word clouds of the conversations about the earthquake. We had access at that point to all the Twitter data about the earthquake in Chile because I was working at Yahoo Labs, and Yahoo Labs had an agreement at that point with Twitter to access their data. These words were originally in Spanish, but they had been translated for the purpose of the paper. So the first day people were talking about a lot about death and disease. People that had died, the toll, like how many had died, and also the tsunami. This was very important of the topics that day. The second day, people were most focused on missing people, trying to find people that they didn't know where they were, also aftershocks. The third day, people were talking about the epicenter in Concepcion. They were also talking, there's Google there mentioned because Google had a tool to help find people that they deployed during those days. And the fourth day, people were talking about like the axis of the Earth, like shifting, and that was a news that was going around during that day. So you can see how conversations have changed. And we see that the large majority of tweets were very helpful because they help find people, they help propagate information of where help was needed, and they helped people communicate. But a lot of tweets were not helpful. Like there were celebrities that were supposedly killed during the earthquake. So Ricardo Arjona, which is like this pop singer, and they said, no, he's dead. He died. Also, there were false tsunami warnings in Valparaiso and false reports of looting as well. So what we did like a small study where we classified the different rumors that occurred during the earthquake. We rumors that turn out to be true, rumors that turn out to be false. So at the top, you see the rumors that tend to be true. Down there, the ones that turn out to be false, like the death of Ricardo Arjona, tsunami in Valparaiso, confirmed truth that our airport was closed, that there was a looting in the supermarket of Concepcion, that there was a tsunami. So, and what we analyzed was how the information was perceived by the network. So, for example, you can see two clear differences between how confirmed truth were propagated and false rumors were propagated. And you have to realize that people did not have access to any other way to confirm this information. Maybe they could confirm it live, but they did not have access to other official sources of information. And what you can see here is that people rarely would deny information that turned out to be true in the end. Deny means saying, I went to the airport and I didn't see it was closed. That would be a tweet that denies an information. Rarely people denied information that turned out to be true, even if they didn't know at the moment if it was true or not. Rarely they questioned information that turned out to be true. In the case of false rumors, people would question them. So the tsunami warning in Valparaiso has a lot of people questioning this news. And also, a lot of people questioning this news and a lot of people denying the news as well. So what we got the sense from here is that the network of people perceive things that turn out to be true in a certain way that is different. So the network has a certain intuition collectively that could allow us to maybe classify this information and know if something seems like it could be truthful information or not, even if they don't know everything about it. So the question that we asked ourselves is like, can we automatically detect false tweets as events are unfolding? So the answer is like, no, we can't see the future. If we don't have external sources, we can't know. But what we can do is we can understand what is the credibility that the event has for the network as a collective entity, as a whole. And so information credibility is the quality that the network will perceive. And as a collective, it's different than individually. So when you see a certain rumor on Twitter, if you look maybe at a few people, at the tweets of few people, you could think that this rumor is true. But then if you do a search and you look at lots of people, what they're saying, and you see a lot of people questioning that rumor, then that rumor is very likely to be false. Yeah. But you don't have to rely only on your friends. You have to look at everybody to kind of understand. And credibility can be decided by the network by different characteristics: who published the information, if there are external sources, what are the headlines, different things like that. At that point, what we did, we did two classification tasks. We did one to classify tweets if they were newsworthy or not, like topics of conversation on Twitter. We did a classifier to understand if they were news or if they were chatter or spam or whatever. And from the ones that were news, we then classify them as credible or not credible. We did a very big crowdsourcing task to gather like news and then classify them as credible and not credible and train our classifier for this. And for newsworthiness, we had like 92 precision, 92% recall. And for credibility, we had 87% precision and 83% recall, which is like really good. And we use different features of the conversations, like text, network propagation, top tweet element features. Like all the features are described in our paper. But something that was very interesting was that features that were language agnostic were very important. So for example, how quickly it was propagated, how many retweets it had characteristic about the authors, if it had external sources, things like that were very important. So if we relied on features that were not language dependent, then this model could be transferred to other languages. So we actually trained this model for English, and then we tested it in Spanish, and it worked very well. So that was something that we found, that there are a lot of features that are like cross-cutting languages to help us understand this information. We had several findings. So the less you rely on external sources, the more likely you are to believe false information. This has been proven over and over to be true. And the problem right now is that everybody, or almost everybody, is relying solely on one source of information, which is our social networks. So if we come back to this year, 10 years later, hundreds of academic works later, how can we be worse than ever? We should have already solved this problem, right, of disinformation. There are several explanations. So one is this term of filter bubbles that you may have heard, that when I go on a social network, I will choose to see information from my friends or people I follow. So this provides one filter over the content that I see. Usually we follow people that think alike us. Okay, this is the phenomenon of homophilia that happens online, where we surround ourselves with people that we feel are just like us. So they probably have our same political views or very similar political views or share our values. So the content that I will see will be very compatible with what I already think. Then on top of that, and this is like the worst part, is the recommendation algorithm. This is the optimization that the social network platform will do to make you engage more. Engage more can mean click more ads or remain more time or see more content on the social platform. And this is the objective function that the social media platform is optimizing for. So what they will do is that over the content that I have pre-selected through my friends, they will reorder that information to show me what they think is more relevant for me. So this provides a more narrow view of things that I already like. And this reduces very much my exposure to divergent points of view. And this has been shown to increase polarity over time. There's the phenomenon of echo chambers, where we have automated accounts that will amplify the extreme political ends. Okay, so you will have conversations in the whole spectrum, like left, right, in between, and you will have a lot of very prolific accounts on the extremes. So this happens, and some people from my research institute in the Project Telar that analyzes the Asamblea Constituyente, okay, that are creating the new constitution, they did the same analysis for Chile, and they found something very, very similar with automated accounts in green there. And the political sides are very amplified. So when people go into social networks, they think the points of view are very radicalized, but that doesn't really reflect the truth of the users that are there. It's just that the people on the more moderated side are not as prolific publishing content. So they're more quiet than the extremes. Social networks make an effort to remove automated accounts or accounts that are paid for, even if they're manipulated by real people, but they're not really that good at it, because every time it has become more hard to identify them. Facebook has become now, with the Facebook papers, and even before with the Cambridge Analytica scandal, one of the main problems, disinformation problems that we have currently. So there have been like 70 countries where disinformation campaigns have been identified in political scenarios. When the Cambridge Analytica scandal happened was because Cambridge Analytica downloaded profiles for 87 million Facebook users, and that even allows them to extend what they have to like everybody, almost everybody in the world. Even if you're not a Facebook user, but you are friends with somebody and they don't have your data, they could infer your political profile just from your friends. Okay, so this allows them to create very detailed profiles of people, and they mostly target Cambridge Analytica for political campaigns and ads people that are undecided. So even if you think about the elections that are going to happen now in Chile, if you're able to convince all of the undecided people to vote for a certain candidate, this candidate is going to win, okay, because they're that important. We had a grant that ended last year to study disinformation in social media. We were awarded 2 grants. They gave 12 grants worldwide. This organization called Social Science One, and they were in agreement with Facebook, and they were going to provide data for this. They anonymized this data using differential privacy. We had to become like differential privacy experts to be able to use the data and train at Facebook and everything. And after working a lot, we realized we could not extract any reliable information about the activity of disinformation campaigns in Chile, because our sample had too much noise, and our country is kind of small in relation to the US or whatever. But this is the main problem that we have. We don't have information about what happens in countries outside of the US, what happens for languages that are not English. And this is like 90% of Facebook users, and we don't understand how Facebook is affecting other languages and other countries. So we actually wrote a paper that is under review about this, the problem when you have these kind of agreements that are not really helpful to understand. So as I mentioned, the main problem is that we have stopped trusting traditional news media, and that the algorithms that optimize user engagements have been biased towards fake information, and platforms don't have incentives to change this. Like, why will I change this if it's giving me money, right? In this scenario, COVID-19 is the perfect storm. Why? We have been living in this long-term crisis. A lot of people have anxiety, especially at the beginning. There's this collective sense-making where everybody's trying to gather information and come to collective conclusions about it. And this can go very wrong when you don't have a lot of information. If we think about the beginning, there was this rumor that if you took ibuprofen, you would become more sick and die, for example. There were a lot of things, or that, you know, you had to, a lot of different medications that never worked. All this went through like very, very quickly through the social network. There were people that exploited this information, and the information space was very political. So you would have clearly, for example, I don't know, Bolsonaro or Trump, people that engage with those political point of views were very prone to disinformation. And for example, in the US, they found that like it was like 70% of disinformation came from the government, from the Trump administration. So this is huge. Who are you going to trust if you can't trust your government? What happens? This came out of the Facebook papers that recently have been recently disclosed by the Facebook whistleblower. Why do these algorithms go very, very wrong and they start promoting disinformation? So Facebook promoted a lot of disinformation, and they had like this different emojis that you could give like to a certain news. Like you could say like thumbs up, or you could say like angry, or different things. And what the papers disclosed was that when people put the angry emoji, they would give it like boosted 5 more times than if somebody just gave like thumbs up. And this information had a lot of angry emojis. So when somebody published something that was clearly not true, people would get angry and provide the reaction of angry. And this, by Facebook, was thought to be very good content to be promoted. So this really, really boosted the views of fake content. And this is a way in which platforms will promote this. Another thing that they this is not from the Facebook papers that came out like some time ago last year. It was that they tried to ban Holocaust deniers, but then they started actually recommending to people other groups to join. Like if I was searching for a Holocaust denier group and I didn't find it, then Facebook would suggest a whole series of other groups that I could join that I would have never found if I had searched for them. So they actually provided a network for Holocaust deniers to join and to meet each other. There's this also, the other disinformation, information disorder is hate speech. And in this topic, we have worked on hate speech detection and bias in the data. Twitter has been shown to be a very toxic place, especially for women. This was a study done by Amnesty International, where they showed that women politicians in the UK could not conduct their campaigns on social media, and this was a huge disadvantage for them. Like if you cannot do your political campaign on social media, you're basically losing a lot of points in comparison to the men. They were receiving a lot of online harassment. If you were a Black woman or a Latino woman, this would increase like 5-fold. And when we started looking at this problem, what we wanted to do was that we realized there were no hate speech detection algorithms for Spanish. So my student Aime Arango, wanted to work on this problem. And we saw that for English, there were like perfect detection results. So for English, this problem appeared to be solved, at least in the scientific literature. And we said, this is weird, because why is Facebook struggling so much to delete hateful content if this has already been solved by scientists? So we tried to reproduce this work for Spanish, and we got very poor results. The industry has shown that for them, and this is a very big problem. So Twitter has had to apologize for not deleting hateful content online. And we tried to reproduce the work done in English for Spanish. We got very bad results. So then we went back and we tried to reproduce the work done for English in English, and we could not do it. We found that, for example, if they were reporting like 93% F1, we were getting like 51% F1. We could not explain this difference. So we actually we did, and especially my student Aime, she had to reproduce the work, and we saw that at first we got the same results as them, but then we corrected certain technical mistakes that they had when training the models. They had data leakage problems from training to test most of the time. And when we corrected this, the performance of the works that we were looking at decreased to like 50%. So we went from papers that were reporting 91%, 93% F1 to decreasing it to 51% by correcting the mistakes in the implementation. This was like 3 important works in the area for which we found problems. So we actually ended up writing this paper that is called Hate Speech Detection is not as easy as you may think, because the problem has not been solved and there's like a huge overestimation of the state of the art. And the problems that we found, that they were using the complete data set for training and testing. And you can say, how can they be so, why would they do this? They did not realize this. For example, they were training their word embeddings with a complete data set, and then they were doing training and testing, but they had already trained their words embeddings with a complete data set. When we reduced the training of the word embeddings, for example, to the feature space only to training, then the performance would decrease. They also did oversampling before splitting train and test. And what happened was that they had the same examples on train and test because they had done the oversampling before that. And the other huge problem was data bias. We took a look at the most popular data set that was being used by everybody. They had a lot of hate speech examples. And what we did was we downloaded those messages to understand who were the users that published this. And because that information was not in the data set, and we found that 90% of the hate speech messages were generated by only 3 users. This is like in 6,000 examples, 90% were generated by 3 users, 3 people. So when you train a classifier on that, your classifier is going to learn to identify those people, not to identify hate speech. So then when you test this on a different data set, it's never going to work. So this is why they only tested it on their data sets and they could not generalize this. How did we find these problems? By having multilingual needs. When you add diversity to research, you come to find these problems. If you only work for English on your data set, on your problem, you do not try it on different scenarios, you will never figure out that your models are flawed, for example. Also, this need to use deep learning for everything made it very obscure to researchers what was happening inside their models, so they could not realize the mistakes that they were making. I'm oversimplifying, but this is one of the issues. We use a simple SVM classifier, and we could bring up the F1 classification to 70% from 50%. So there was actually no need for deep learning in this particular problem that we were studying. Overestimation of the state of the art is more common than we think. We always have to look at the data. Something that is underestimated, I think, personally, in the field of machine learning is data. And I think data is key. I mean, it's super important to look at the data and to understand the biases and the limitations of your data for learning. So I'm going to take like 2 more minutes. And this has not only happened like in web research. There was a recent survey done on all the studies of AI tools for COVID, and they found the same problems, that they could not be reproduced, that they were not reliable. And the problems were very similar to the one that we found in hate speech detection, that what they were reporting did not work in any other scenario. So this is not just a problem of us. And this is mostly because of not understanding the data that you're using. There's this classic example that there were a data set where they had like very, very sick people. The x-rays are very, very sick people with COVID. People were laying down when they took the x-ray because they were very sick. And the people that were not sick had the x-rays like sitting up. So then the classifier learned to identify when the person was laying down or standing up instead of identifying COVID or not COVID. So that is a flaw in the data set that you have to understand. So you can't really say that you've solved a problem until you've successfully applied it to different scenarios. And the multilingual problem has become super relevant because as I was telling you before, the Facebook papers disclosed that Facebook has done absolutely no handling of hate speech or misinformation for outside of the US, basically. So, and languages that are not English. So this is 90% of their users. What are we currently doing? We are doing hate-specific multilingual embeddings, and we have shown that they work much better than when you use universal embeddings that have been trained on very large data sets. You can train this on very small data sets, and they will work significantly better than multilingual BERT or Muse or Laser. So this is some of we're trying to exploit cross-cutting patterns, and we're also doing this for disaster management as well. So I have like 0. Although Spanish is one of the top 5 languages, there are very few resources, NLP resources, and we think that this explains a gap in AI in Latin America, that we need to generate and invest in resources for our own language, and also to train people that are qualified to create AI for other languages. Our group has different resources for this, so that are publicly available. Spanish word embeddings, BERT for Spanish, hate speech evaluation data sets. There's a lot of value in the collective, as I was telling you about. We have done different work about crisis informatics that I would just skip. This is for detecting earthquakes. So if you felt the earthquake like 2 nights ago, you can still, I think, see it. You can search for the date. This is the website, tuicali.cl, where you can see earthquakes that have been happening and have been tweeted by people online. When people talk about an earthquake, you can go and see it on Tuicali. And so this is a seismograph that is social and is used by the National Centro Sismográfico Nacional, National Seismology Center, and CHOA as well. And there's this other tool, Galleon, that I think now it was down. I have to check it. But it's for navigating news in Chile and trying to make this collective sense making more accurate. Okay, so I think this is the last message is that I think technologies are not going to solve the problem of hate speech and disinformation. We need a multidisciplinary approach. We cannot solve a problem that we ourselves have created. We need a lot of help. So we should not just create a new AI that will remove disinformation. This is a socio-political phenomenon as well. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Barbara. Very, very engaging talk, very inspiring. Thank you very much. There's congratulations for the Test of Time Award. Very impressive. And there's 1 or 2 questions in the chat already. So from YouTube, someone is, Diego Salinas is asking, I heard that to model Facebook users, they used the theory of the big 5 personality traits. Do you know anything about it, about this?
Okay, sorry, I was muted. So I'm not an expert on the big 5. Like I'm not an expert on social sciences. So my expertise is more on the computational science of this. So there have been a lot of Facebook papers that have been published with the complete data. Now I don't know how much to trust them or how much they reflect what has been happening like all over the world. They are very narrow in their view, but I don't have information about this, sorry.
So Martin Pedemonte, do you think that eliminating anonymity in social networks can help with the issue of fake news and hate speech?
This is an interesting question. Like I have been asked this before when talking about this, and I don't think so. I don't think it's a problem of being anonymous. This is a personal point of view. I think it's a problem of depersonalization. Like you don't see the other person that you're talking with, because I have also seen a lot of extreme reaction on WhatsApp chats, for example. Like I'm in a WhatsApp chat with like neighbors of like where I live, and people will start like fighting over like nothing, you know, like huge fights. And I think it's just because you don't see the other person. You would not probably do it as much if you had the other person in front of you. Also in the like parent groups at the school as well. Like, so I'm not sure it has to do with anonymity. And I also, when I mentioned that there were very few users generating hate speech in the data set, this is a phenomenon that happens all the time. Like there are very few users creating the hate speech environments. There are very few users propagating disinformation, and disinformation is amplified by the recommendation algorithm. So it's not necessarily that they're real people propagating or creating hate speech or creating disinformation. Sometimes it's just organized groups as well of very, very few. If you look at the anti-vaccine movement, this is a very coordinated small group of people.
So from Joao Baptista, how do you think the scientific community in South America can contribute to avoid fake news, dissemination of fake news?
I personally don't know how to solve the fake news problem in an easy way. I think that as a scientist have to engage in multidisciplinary work. I have been working for some time with experts in communication, academics from the communications department, academics from politics as well, political science, social science as well. And I have been learning a lot about how people communicate. That is something that as a computer scientist, I wouldn't be able to do. And I think these problems are very complex. So they are complex social-political problems. It has been shown that you can tell a person that a certain news is fake and show them evidence, this is fake. But if the news agrees with their value system, you know, like they will still propagate it because they think it's kind of useful, or it reinforces something that they believe. So it's very hard in that scenario. If you're showing somebody, this is not true, you have to believe me, I have evidence, and they still don't believe it, what are you going to do as a scientist? I believe that as a society, we need to improve education. I mean, I think we should raise our kids in the frame of mind of critical thinking, of criticizing the information that they're presented, and that they have to learn this since they're very young, because they're going to be in this environment their entire lives. So as they grow, they have to learn to be critical with the information that they receive. And we have to start teaching this in schools and universities and everything.
Great. Well, from Joao, do you think a stronger regulation could help? I think you answered already, but
the regulation thing is strange. I think there needs to be a regulation. I don't know how to do this regulation. There are experts on this topic worldwide, because you have to be very careful with freedom of speech. There is an attempt in Chile to create like the first nationwide regulation of social networks. And this has been very criticized as it's going to like destroy freedom of speech of people in online social networks in Chile. So you have to be very, very careful. Like, how are you going to supervise? How are you going to enforce? Like, these are things that you cannot leave as ambiguous. You have to be very specific. So it's a complex problem that as a computer scientist, I'm probably not going to solve.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you for, well, I think that was the last question in the chat. Thank you for your answers. Thank you for your talk. I really enjoyed it.
I'm glad. Thank you for inviting me again. It was fun.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Thank you very much also, Jose del Piano. I'm very sorry not having you here like we were in, I think it was 2019, we were together in Valdivia, and it would have been marvelous to have you here. Maybe next year we can make something. Thank you very much for your interesting and so important talk, because of what we are living today. Well, we are going to have a break again, and then we are going to start at 11:30 with the last presentation. It is not a conference presentation, it is an outreach. It's in parallel to the conference. It will be in Portuguese, and José Alfredo told me that he will speak very slowly so Spanish people can understand what he's saying. It's a very interesting talk about ethics and artificial intelligence. So every everyone is invited to participate. Thank you very much. We see at 11:30.